And that's why when the goose ate the chicken, it burped and it said nay, because it was a horse the whole time. Oh, I know. Tuesday, September 25th. I really want someone to go back and actually write the jokes that lead up to my punchlines. And you start with my punchline, like, I've got a joke that leads up to it, and to see what kind of things make sense to you. And this will be the regular class. If you're in advanced class, don't watch this one. You'll just be confused. If you have trouble with the irony, I'll be posting a second video later today. Watch the second video because it's going to teach you even more about irony. Book report comes due in 8 days, so a week from tonight. Many of you are going to be freaking yourself out and crying yourself to sleep because you waited to the last minute. Which brings us to positive peer pressure. For the first time ever, I'm going to try a new thing where I'm going to try and use positive peer pressure. Where if I have a class where everybody turns in their book report, I will give them candy. And so if we have one kid not turn it in, no candy for the entire class. And everyone will know it is you not turning it in because you have to hand your book reports to me one at a time as we go through and do it. So just giving you a heads up. You have the ability to ruin candy for an entire classroom because that adds extra pressure to you. If you need help with the book report, let me know so we can try and help you not be that kid. And then we have a quiz coming up on Friday. Make sure you've read the story for that one, and I'll give you guys homework coming up on Thursday. Whee! Now to our story of the necklace. For you at home, you can get it on my website. It's called Necklace. Looks something like that. We're going to go through and do the reading bits to try and help you out. In the Story Mountain, what's the very first part of the Story Mountain? And what's the definition of exposition? And if you're in my first period, you'll realize that we're reading our book out loud. And in our book that we're reading out loud, you don't.
Who has not had their picture taken?
Our entire book so far has been exposition. We are roughly 200 pages in, and it has all been exposition. We're still waiting for the rising action to happen, which is kind of scary. On this story, we do have definite exposition because it's going to go through there and do those descriptive bits of the characters and give you some background and stuff like that. But then it goes into rising action pretty quick after that. But there's definitely rising action into it. We'll get the whole, I mean, maybe not super exciting, but at least exciting enough.
What about how a girl lost her necklace?
Oh, you've already read it. That takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
What?
Will there be a definite ending on this?
Yes, there is a definite ending. And it is a definite ironic ending that's going to be somewhat kind of entertaining. Sam!
For the short story number 2,
Yes.
so like if we do all 3, we get extra 1 point?
Correct. Wait. If you do every extra option.
Yeah, like 1, 2, can't do 3.
Correct. Get you 3 extra points each extra option.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I guess I should, for those of you at home, there is homework due tomorrow. I forgot to put that up there. That's my fault. But there is story homework 2 due tomorrow. Doing extra options does get you extra points. All right. Loud one.
Can I read the end?
The very end?
Like,
Oh, no, we're not there yet.
can I read it?
No.
Wow, this is
Well,
so long.
if you do, then I end up not giving you the ends of the stories in the future. Because read the story like we go through it normally.
Wait, no, like, I want to read it out loud. Like,
Oh.
it's
The
loud.
bells
Oh,
ring
possibly. That
for
might be
ends.
possible. All right, I'll put that picture up there for you to start.
Could we?
It's going to make sense in a moment. As we get into our story, figure out 1, characters, and 2, setting. And, yes, when and where, and who's in the story. Matilda Loisel was one of those beautiful and charming girls born into a family of poor and ugly people. She had no chance of getting marriage proposals from a wealthy and attractive man. No expectations, no means of becoming popular, understood, or loved. And she let herself get married off to a little office worker in the government office of education. Her tastes were simple, because she'd never been able to afford anything else. But she was as unhappy as though she had married someone beneath her. For women have no taste or class. Their beauty, grace, and charm serving them for birth or family. Their beauty and sense of humor are their only chance of ever being popular. And it put this slum girl on a level with the highest lady in the land. Matilda suffered endlessly, feeling herself born for every rich toy and luxury. She suffered from the poorness of her house, from its bare walls, worn chairs, ugly curtains, all these things of which other women of her social class would not even have been aware, tormented and insulted her. The sight of the little servant girl who came to do the work in her little house aroused heartbroken regrets and hopeless dreams in her mind. She imagined silent dining rooms radiant with ancient paintings, lit by bright lamps and gleaming bronze sockets. She imagined huge entertainment rooms hung with magnificent artifacts, wondrous pieces of furniture supporting priceless ornaments, and small, charming, perfumed rooms created just for little parties of close friends. Men who were famous and sought after, whose very fame aroused every other woman's envious thoughts. When she sat down for dinner at the round table, covered with a dirty tablecloth, opposite her husband, who took the cover off the soup bowl, she exclaimed delightedly, "Aha! Cheap chicken broth! What could be better?" She imagined, oh, by the way, you know what that's an example of? When she says, "Yay, cheap chicken broth, what could be better than that?"
Sarcasm.
Nicely done. It's almost like you guys learned yesterday. Now, she imagined delicate meals, gleaming silverware, glorious paintings covering the walls with folk of a past age and strange birds and fairy forests. She imagined delicate food served in marvelous dishes, murmured pleasant conversations, listened to with a careful smile as she fiddled with the rosy flesh of trout or wings of asparagus chicken. She had no fancy clothes, no expensive jewels, nothing. And these were the only things she loved. She felt that she was made for them. She had longed so eagerly to charm, to be desired, to be wildly attractive and sought after. She had a rich friend, an old school friend, whom she refused to visit because she was so incredibly unhappy when she returned home. She would weep for entire days with grief, regret, despair, and misery. That's the end of our exposition. So, who do we have as our character so far?
Matilda.
How would you describe Matilda?
Sad.
Depressed.
So, poor, sad,
Mental
depressed.
Envious
Mental issues.
Envious of?
of her rich friends.
Alright. Why do you say mental issues?
Because she should be grateful for what she has.
Is she grateful for what she has?
She's a gold digger.
Why do you say gold digger?
But she'll be like,
Oh, I
people
want a
with
rich
money.
man because of his money, and I think I deserve all the money.
And does she have all the money?
No, but she's a gold digger.
No, but if she was a gold digger, she'd marry someone with more money than a
That's
government worker.
She
She
would have.
thinks she's cute. She's like, I want a rich
What?
man.
Because I want to date a
Well-
rich
And I want
man.
these just like my friends.
So,
Every classic fourth
part of the issue is she would like to be a gold digger, but she was unable to find. She was unable to find the gold to dig. What does she look like? How about that part?
She thinks she's cute.
She's ugly.
She
No.
gotta be ugly if she ain't not getting a man.
She was
That's-
She's ugly at the beginning of the story.
Oh, did you
No,
read?
beautiful.
Her
Family
family loses.
She's beautiful, but her family's
There you go.
She was born with
Who told her that?
So,
She just looks pretty, but she doesn't work
so her looks, she is incredibly attractive, but she comes from a family of uggos. But for some reason, it's like uggo, beauty person. And so for some reason, out pops this really gorgeous person, and she has a great personality, but apparently she comes from a really poor family, and so because of that, she thinks that she deserves richness, but feels like she can't get it, so she ends up just marrying some normal person.
Be grateful.
And the person she marries isn't exactly poor, he's just normal. I mean, in there it mentions that she has a servant who comes in and cleans the house, and I don't think of myself as poor, and I don't have a servant that cleans my house. But she's like, I'm not as rich as I could be because I only have one servant. And so it's those along those same lines.
People around her must be like,
She's one of those people who is pretty on the outside. Is she pretty on the inside?
No, she's a gold digger.
And that's she is not as pretty on the inside as she could be.
no, she's ugly on the outside and inside.
She seems to think that she's a hottie. And she does have the dreams of having wonderful
So
things.
she thinks everyone's gonna think her some sort pretty.
Right.
And then he'll be really
Well, no, yes, it's it.
We'll find out later on that apparently some other people do find her attractive too, at least on the outside. You guys picked up on the sarcasm.
Bill Gates.
Alright, so this next part for this picture is going to come in. Yes.
Is she gonna commit adultery and cheat on him?
Ooh, what a fun what? No. That's not until later in the year.
She's gonna marry Bill Gates.
Oh, okay.
She's gonna marry a lot of boys again.
We do have a thing that's going to happen. It's just not that thing that's going to happen. We are going to introduce a. Wait, do we have setting wise? We know when it's taking place? Not really yet.
Yeah, we do.
What?
At her house, the setting. Her house.
It does take place for a house so far. We're going to find out more about the when coming up, and we're going to introduce another character coming up. One evening, her husband came home with an excited air, holding a large envelope in his hand. "Here's something for you," he said. Swiftly, she tore the paper and drew out a printed card on which were these words: "The Minister of Education and Mrs. Rampone request..." Hiccup. Excuse me again. "The pleasure of the company of Mr. and Mrs. Loisel at the Ministry on the evening of Monday, January the 18th. Instead of being delighted, as her husband hoped, she flung the invitation angrily across the table, murmuring, "What do you want me to do with this?" "Why, darling, I thought you'd be pleased. You never go out, and this is a great occasion. I went through tremendous trouble to get it. Everyone wants one. It's very rare, and very few go to the clerks. You'll see all the really important people there." She looked at him out of furious eyes and said impatiently, "And what do you suppose I'm to wear at such an affair?" He had not thought about it, he stammered. "Why, the dress you go to the theater in. It looks very nice to me." He stopped, stupefied and utterly at a loss, when he saw that his wife was beginning to cry. 2 large tears ran slowly down from the corners of her eyes, towards the corners of her mouth. "What's the matter with you?" he faltered. But with a violent effort, she overcame her grief and replied in a calm voice, wiping her wet cheeks, "Nothing. Only I haven't to dress, so I can't go to this party. Give your invitation to some friend of yours whose wife will be turned out better than I shall." He was heartbroken. We'll pause there real quick. So we introduce a new character, which is
The husband.
husband, and we find out what part of year is taking place.
1971.
No.
January.
Nice done. Taking place in the wintertime towards January. And we found out about the kid who lost the points for packing up while Mr. Brovec was still teaching. And then, let's see, what is it that the husband tries to do? What was that? Why? How does he try to make her happy?
To sit at your party.
Nicely done. Gets her tickets. Gets her tickets to a party. And how does she react to this rich ticket party?
She's mad.
And why is she so upset about getting an invitation? Nicely done. Nothing to wear. And so she's like, "How dare you invite me to this rich fancy party with all these rich fancy people when I have nothing to wear, you horrible man, you." And so she yells at her husband. So hopefully, see, she's a much better person than what you thought. Adam?
That's what I'm gonna assume that happens. So I think she's gonna go to it without a dress. She's gonna find a man, cheat on her husband, and get married with the other man, and then get money.
She's probably gonna
So she's going to go full gold digger?
feeling.
Loud one?
Do with the
What?
necklace.
See, so you know she's a gold digger. If she was happy with the guy she was with, she wouldn't want to be like, "Oh, fancy." She would just like go to the party.
Yeah, because if she wasn't trying to pick up other mans.
Don't worry. It gets even worse than that.
Okay, now she's gonna ditch her.
Look here, Matilda, he persisted. What would be the cost of a suitable dress which you could use on other occasions as well? Something very simple. She thought for several seconds, reckoning up prices and also wondering for how large a sum she could ask without bringing upon herself an immediate refusal and an exclamation of horror from the careful-minded clerk. At last, she replied with some hesitation, "I don't know exactly, but I think I could do it on $400. He grew slightly pale, for this was exactly the amount he'd been saving for a new gun, intending to do a little hunting next summer in the neighboring woods with some friends who went deer hunting there on Sundays. Nevertheless, he said, "Very well, I'll give you $400, but try and get a really nice dress with the money." So they come up with a slight idea, and what does he do for her?
Give her money.
Nicely done. And so how much is it he gives her?
At the end, she's probably gonna like get her.
And so she wants to get the really nice dress. And so he says, all right, he's going to use his gun money to try and help her out in one form or another. And so now everything should be good. She has money. She gets to go buy her new dress. He's not going to have a gun, which he might want later. Sam?
Shouldn't we just like buy the gun and rob a bank, get more money and give her?
That might not be the best solution to everything. We're going to try not go straight to criminal activities. Mr. Brovicast, felonies solve so many things.
Go to the dollar store and get a Nerf gun.
The day of the party drew near, and Mrs. Loisel seemed sad, uneasy, and anxious. Her dress was ready, however. One evening, her husband said to her, "What is the matter with you? You've been very odd the last 3 days. I'm utterly miserable at not having any jewels, not a single stone to wear. I shall look like absolutely no one. I would almost rather not go to the party." "Wear flowers," he said. "They're very attractive at this time of year. For $10, you could get 2 or 3 gorgeous roses." She was not convinced. "No, there's nothing so humiliating as looking poor in the middle of a lot of rich women." "How stupid you are," exclaimed her husband. "Go see Mrs. Forestier and ask her to lend you some jewels. You know her quite well enough for that." She uttered a cry of delight. "That's true! I never thought of it." And the next day, she went to see her friend and told her her trouble. We had a new issue, by the way. And what's our new problem?
She needs jewels.
So once again, the dress is not enough. And now she needs jewels. Malachi?
I know what she's finna do. Okay, so it's gonna go down like this. She's gonna get the jewels, and she's gonna use them for this stuff. And once she get a good man, she gonna leave him, or she gonna stay with him and cheat on him.
You guys
for
are
the rest
really
of
into this
her life.
gold
No,
digging
the
thing.
man's gonna dump her.
She's
But
gonna
after
need
she
shit.
dumped her husband,
Hold on to your
she's
thought.
got no one.
Choose my name.
Next day, she went to see her friend and told her her trouble. Mrs. Forestier went to her dressing table, took up a large box, brought it to Mrs. Loisel, opened it, and said, "Choose, my dear." First, she saw some bracelets, then a pearl necklace, then a Venetian cross in gold and gems of exquisite workmanship. She tried the effect of the jewels before the mirror, hesitating, unable to make up her mind to leave them, to give them up. She kept on asking, "Haven't you anything else?" "Yes, look for yourself. I don't know what you would like best." Suddenly, she discovered in a black satin case a superb diamond necklace. Her heart began to beat covetously. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. She fastened it around her neck upon her high dress and stared in shocked wonder at the beautiful sight of herself. Then, with hesitation, she asked in anguish, "Could you lend me this? Just this alone?" "Yes, of course." She flung herself around her friend, embraced her crazily, and went away with her treasure. So she found the thing that works. She has a necklace. Everything is perfect and happy. And so now there's nothing else. And we get to the day of the party, and everything's going to go perfectly.
No, she's gonna want shit.
The day of the party arrived. Mrs. Loisel was a success. She was the prettiest woman present, elegant, graceful, smiling, quite above herself with happiness. All the men stared at her, asked her name, wanted to be introduced to her. All the rich young bachelors were eager to waltz with her. Even the minister himself noticed her. She danced madly, enthusiastically, drunk with pleasure, with no other thought for anything in the triumph of her beauty, in the pride of her success, in a cloud of happiness made up of this universal worship and admiration of the desires she had aroused, of the completeness of a victory so dear to her female heart. In other words, was the party successful for her?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, she's a hottie and all the dudes want to dance with her.
Mr. Brovicast, I thought you said something was going to happen.
Oh, something's going to happen. That's just not till tomorrow.
Clearly, if she's
Thank you for